Excellent. Well, good day, everyone. Today, going to be interviewing Steve Surridge, founder of Forbury, and we're going to be talking about real estate technology. So, Steve, I know we've spoken before, but do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the inspiration for Forbury, what Forbury does, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we started at Forbury 10 years ago um, by identifying a need, primarily in the Australian market, for the need to do quick analysis and robust analysis of commercial real estate assets, primarily at the institutional level um, and mainly in the appraiser area.
And before that, I mean, traditionally, deals in the Aussie market were being done, what, just with Excel, basically?
Yeah, I think most of the owners, etc., are using Excel. The uh, appraisal market was using in-house models, some of which I had built over the 10 years preceding that. But yes, it was Excel, and mainly because just the way the Australian market had sort of evolved, in particularly around the valuation methodologies that were being used, where there's primary reliance was on the cap approach with a supporting DCF rather than the DCF being the primary methodology. And that was in the appraisal space.
Got it. And then it grew from there. And then obviously it's not just appraisals at this point, it's people and
Yeah.
acquisitions. It's really anyone who wants to put a value on an asset.
Yeah. So our kind of point of difference was that we were providing an integrated cap approach and DCF valuation, where the two were run from the same set of inputs and generated the set of answers that allowed you to compare the different methodologies and therefore determine a value of an asset.
Now I'm a little bit familiar with the product, but obviously, not everyone listening is. You want to explain to people how it sort of works with Excel?
Yeah, so over the years, over the 10 years, we've often thought about building our interface of our product into a web-based product, but most of the customers have continually requested and like the Excel interface that we use. So we've gone from a pure Excel workbook and migrated the logic out of the workbook and into a cloud-based server. So we serve up an Excel front end for our product, and that allows us to then connect to our database via a Microsoft add-in, and that does all the heavy lifting of calculations as returns the answers to the workbook renders information. You can use an Excel workbook as you normally would use it, insert sheets, do side calculations, etc., but allows that robustness of the calculation logic not to get tampered with. And so we also build the financing and underwriting component off the back of that as well. So you've got an all-in-one system.
So for the user, I mean, in small words, I mean, from the user's point of view, they're working in Excel just like they would normally, but now the calculations, the heavy lifting is being done basically not in the workbook. It's being done out there in the cloud, and then the answers get spit back essentially. So then they
That's
can link it
correct.
up to everything else, which is really
Yeah.
cool. I mean, and frankly, one of the reasons I wanted to speak with you was, or is, I should say, that a lot of the other software solutions for real estate valuation are some sort of self-contained canned product, which is not really playing nice with Excel. And I mean,
Yeah.
as someone who works in the industry, everything comes back to Excel at the end of the day. So to
Yeah.
actually start in Excel and end in Excel, it
Yeah.
just seems like a more natural solution to things.
Yeah.
So
So
obviously,
yeah, well,
sorry,
I guess just to sort of carry on from that, the
yeah,
people love rendering data in Excel. Um, it's a great way to look at information. And so lots of I don't call them canned products, end up being exported to Excel so that you can do things with them. I think the concept of using Excel as a browser, in fact, is kind of is it's not unique, but it's just the way we're working with Excel to provide that front end to render that information provides our users with a pretty transparent, or at least more transparent product, which you can then add on and put customizations on, etc. And so you've got just a lot more flexibility than you have if you had a pure web-based product. The difference, however, is that the Excel doesn't really play nicely with other software applications, and that an instance of Excel is a instance of software in its own right. And so how we've dealt with that is we've produced connectivity through an API. So we can actually, whilst we write information back and forth into a workbook, you can also export information out of our workbooks via our add-in and API and then into the other database systems. So we've actually addressed what is, a concern about having an Excel front end.
It, it's interesting. So one other question I wanted to ask you. I mean, you're based. You started out of the Australian market. Obviously, it's a big planet, and I'd imagine a lot of the real estate problems that we have in the United States or the UK or what have you are not that dissimilar from the Australian market. So, how do you see the competitive landscape? How are you evolving? What markets?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you moving into? What are the barriers? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so we've 3 years ago we basically moved out of sort of the APAC region. We've got customers in Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, and we decided that we needed to go and have a look at the UK market. So we basically branched out, took a product to market there with a transactions focus. And we've been building a customer base there. I think we've got 30 odd customers in the UK now. And the feedback from that market when people started to see it was, hey, we should really take this into the US. So we have been actively pursuing a US entry strategy over the last 9 months. Actually, as long as more like 12 months now. And yeah, we've got an iteration of our product which we think is localized to be of interest to US based companies. So in terms of the landscape, there's obviously a lot of Excel still out there, and there's obviously in the US there's a lot of people who use the Argus system,
Sure.
and but then they still couple that with Excel. So in terms of competitive landscape, that's the main sort of competitor, I guess, as such. I mean, we're offering a slightly different product, and yeah, we think it's got an application in transactions, particularly in the US. Obviously, the office market, industrial, retail, main core are our core focus.
So one question which sort of follows from that, I think, is, I mean, the U.S., the UK, Australia, we all speak English. Obviously, we have different ways of pronouncing things, but have you considered non-English speaking markets? I mean, because obviously, you know,
Yeah,
there's other countries. I mean, not that, I
yeah,
mean, look, I know a lot of people in Germany who speak English for business
yeah,
purposes, but
yeah,
Europe's a big place too. Has that
yeah.
been part of the thinking also?
Yes, I mean, obviously, as soon as we put down a flag in the UK, we started to get pulled into Europe. So we do actually have some customers in Poland, France, and Germany. And so, and it's interesting you make the observation that actually the challenges in real estate aren't that different around the world. There are lots and lots of commonalities, and there are some differences, some valuation differences, some cap approach differences, but a
Sure.
cash flow is a cash flow in
Right.
the end.
I mean,
So,
tenants pay rent. That's what they do.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And
Right.
and partially, sometimes they recover all the expenses, and sometimes they don't. And so, and then there's obviously things around the edges of that as well. But in principle, I think there's enough commonality to make a really good global product or have global product reach.
No, it's interesting to me. I mean, it's something that if anything, I've taught for years, and one recurring theme whenever I speak with people in international markets is we're all dealing with the same issues. The
Yeah,
accents are different, and maybe they have a different word for things, but the math
yeah,
is fundamentally the same. So
mm,
obviously, there are broader economic issues going on also. I mean, at least in the US, inflation's been going crazy. I know you and I have spoken a little bit about material costs. I mean, our industry is interesting just as far as technology adoption goes. Do you find challenges with just getting real estate professionals to understand the benefit of technology? Because I mean, not to sort of badmouth our industry, but I often think of our industry as being relatively set in its ways when it comes to tech. We use
yeah.
brick because the Romans used brick. That tends to be an attitude I come across. So do you see that from a tech standpoint?
Yes, yes, I think we've probably been slow to adopt technology. I guess there's people in property who are property people, and then there's people in property that are finance people. And obviously the main part of it, if you know, is really the property side, and making sure that the asset stands up and it's used and utilized properly, and etc. And I think as an investment class, it's an enormous global kind of play, and it's just a question of, and there's so many niches within that play. It's like, how do you actually create a technology solution that's broad enough to actually be applied in all the jurisdictions and all the differences in all the different asset classes? And so you have to focus on the core at some point. And then there's always an exception to the core with property. And I mean, it starts with the leases. I mean, the fact that people can just write leases and put in clauses that they're kind of just a negotiated thing. It starts at that point, and that makes it more and more difficult for the financing, I guess, the analysis or investment analysis of leases, when the starting point actually can be kind of anything you want.
Sure,
And so
sure.
so in terms of adoption, I think the industry is catching up. I think the enormous challenge within the commercial real estate industry, I mean, the residential's kind of been able to adopt technology faster because it's a more consistent kind of product, and comparable, comparables regarding property sales, etc., are much easier to make, because once you get into commercial, is the shopping center over here similar to the one that's in some other demographic location? It's harder to draw those comparisons, and so people always find a reason as to why something's different in real estate. And I think what we really need to do is focus in on what the core is and actually take the core outwards. And
Sure,
I
not
guess that is happening. That is happening.
no, it's a great point. I mean, not everything can be an edge case. I mean, there's got to be some commonalities to things, and some
Yeah,
backbone of how you actually look at assets. No, I
yeah,
mean, look, your point is well taken. I mean, our industry, we have a lot of everyone's got their own slightly different way of doing things. But when you start to think of a tech solution, you need to start to fit things into boxes.
you do,
It's
you do.
interesting. So,
Mm,
as far as sort of evolution of the firm, I mean, you're growing, you're looking into other markets, without giving away great secrets. Any great plans for, say, the next 12 to 24 months? Like, what direction are you moving in
yeah,
as a firm,
yeah,
technology standards,
yeah.
industry? Like, what are you doing for the next year or two?
Yeah, we're continually advancing our platform, and that just involves technology investment, trying to utilize or leverage AI where possible. We've got tooling that helps people manage data into our product, and we've got API products so that we can extract data out of it. On the market side, yes, it's just continual double down in the European market. Australia, we want to expand some more into the APAC region, and obviously get a foothold into the US market by providing some real value for participants in the US. That's kind of
You're
at an overall
No, it's
strategy
interesting. No,
focus.
look, you're in a great place from a growth standpoint for a tech company. I mean, you've got a product that works. You're not in startup mode. You're in that nice the vertical part of the S curve where you start to get more penetration and more users, and then more
Yeah,
revenue, and then one hand washes the other, so to speak. It's a
yeah,
very positive place to be for a firm. And as far as customers go, you definitely have a lot of there are a lot of people still using Excel spreadsheets who could be definitely using something else, or at least
yeah.
expanding what they're doing.
Yeah,
Well, look,
I think
this is
of
sorry.
everybody who have talked to over the last 6 months, they're still all using Excel's for component of the solution
Sure.
for doing investment management. And so, yeah,
Excel's unavoidable. I mean, it's
yeah,
it's it's the language of finance and the language of industry. I've kidded around sometimes that there's the old joke that French is the international language of love. If that's true, Excel is the international language of finance. Everyone
yeah,
the moment you put it on a spreadsheet, it doesn't matter what language they speak; they immediately understand what you're talking about. So such is life. Well, look, this has been very constructive, and I'm glad we got to talk a little bit about Forbury. For those of you listening who want to check out the website, it's forbury.com, and that's Steve's company, and it's worth checking out the software from my somewhat biased opinion. Other than that, thanks to everyone for joining us, and also Steve, thanks for lending us your time, and we appreciate it.
Oh, it's a
Thanks again.
pleasure. Thanks. Great to see you,
Thanks.
Josh.
Great.